Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. A while ago I found a couple of my old sketchbooks from college and talked about how crazy they were and how I was struggling a lot as an artist. And then I found a sketchbook from when I kind of got past my crazy period and I stopped wanting to make weird conceptual art, and I realized that I actually wanted to draw, and that was the kind of art that made me happy and that I actually wanted to do. And in one of those videos, I mentioned prior to my crisis point in art school, I wanted to be Leonardo da Vinci. I wanted to be Michelangelo. And the sketchbook I've been looking for this whole time is this. This is my London sketchbook, where I think everything in this book came from things I observed in London. So this here would be Degas' Dancer Ready to Dance with her right foot forward. He sculpted it 1885 to 1890, and he was nearly blind when he sculpted some of these. The media I'm using is Conte crayon. It's sort of this sort of chalky stick with a lot of grease in it, so it really sticks to the paper. And you can get it in brown, you can get it in sanguine, you can get it in black. And it's one of the closest materials you can get to the chalk favored by a lot of classical artists throughout history. You can get like a dark pressure with it, you can get a very light pressure with it. You can build up and mix it to get a feeling of tone or cool blues and warm browns. And it's a very versatile media for these kinds of studies, but it's also almost impossible to erase. So you got to commit to it. You got to commit to, if you make a mistake, you're going to have to commit to that and just build on top of it and keep going. Notice how this is very soft and ghostly, and I've wiped away. And as I move forward in space, I'm trying to punch the light in the dark and give it some of that glimmer. Looks pretty good. This is a study of Leonardo da Vinci's study for, I think it's the Virgin and St. Anne, and it's also got the Christ Child and John the Baptist in it. And what I really like about this sketchbook is you can see me working in a few distinct ways to try to make different observations on how the drawing is drawn. So this is just a pencil sketch of the outline where I'm trying to get a feel for where maybe the St. Anne's head stops and where the Virgin's head starts. But then I'd also do tonal studies where I'm trying to capture all the light and shadow and dark. So this is another Degas, Spanish Dancer, 1881 to 1885. Cool. So this would be a study of the Virgin Mary, and I'm no Leonardo da Vinci. So I was trying to observe how soft Leonardo da Vinci was in his drawing and how he was drawing on top of things over and over again. So I think I may have distorted the face a little bit, and I messed up on the face, and I came in with white on top of that to try to lighten it back up. And what I think I was paying attention to, though, was how he would have really loose light lines in the back, and then more towards the front, he was rendering things a little bit more, trying to get the feel of the contours, the feel of the cheekbones, and that's what I was looking for. And I think I observed that neck pretty well. And yeah. Leonardo da Vinci is Leonardo da Vinci for a reason, guys. And his sketches are about as fascinating as his finished paintings, in my opinion. I think this is a study of a Michelangelo drawing. And you can see I messed up the face here and then moved it back. I didn't do a structure drawing. I just went right into observing Michelangelo's lines. So this is a completely disproportionate torso. And I even took a few loose notes on things I read at the placards there that I won't talk about now because it's too hard to discern my handwriting. This is a Titian. The original I was looking at had a blue background, so I just conveyed that with a probably sanguine Conte crayon for the background. And then you see I messed up her eye and redrafted that and did really loose strokes to get the feel of her cloak, and just some horizontal strokes for the texture. Built up a little darker line along the outline where there's a really strong division between light and dark. Another Michelangelo. I think this might have been in the original. I think that there was originally like an upside down foot and a torso, like he drew it and then he flipped it and he drew it some more. And it was probably a study for a Christ child. Oh, this is really interesting. So here we've got two studies of the Foot of David by Michelangelo. I didn't get to see the original marble. I got to see a plaster copy of it in Britain. And this is, even though this drawing is more rendered than this drawing, this is a weaker drawing, and this is a stronger drawing, and I will show you why. So I think it actually does have that really long second toe that's even longer than the big toe. What you can see I'm doing here is I'm just filling stuff in. I'm trying to like I'm trying to draw everything and fill it all in, and it gets this flattish look where I can tell where I was trying to draw the plane, I was trying to draw the light and shadow, but I didn't really figure out the planes. And so the result is I can tell I'm just scribbling over here, and it gets flat. This drawing, I'm actually trying to pay attention to the planes, and I'm figuring out the shape of the foot and not just drawing toe by toe. So I figured out the shape of the big toe. You can see here where I indicated sort of the bend of the toes and the joints. And then I actually paid attention to this plane here. So what here is just a few scribbles. Here I figured out there's a plane there, and it's bending backwards and in shade. And there's a strong shadow underneath this heel, and the foot has this shape. So if I needed to do a painting of this, this is the much stronger drawing to refer to, because I've actually observed something important about the shape of the foot that I've messed up in this one, where I'm getting fixated on the texture of the foot. Surface details are not as important as the underdrawing. You can sketch out the underdrawing quickly, fix mistakes in the underdrawing, and then you have the basis upon which to put your details. Otherwise, it's like a smiley face with a million whiskers on it. A smiley face with a million carefully painted whiskers on it isn't going to look like a realistic face just because you added all that extra realistic detail. You need the underdrawing right before you go into detail work. This has got to be a Rodin Sibel. Rodin, go draw Rodin anytime you get a chance. So I think she was, once again, I'm trying to push the lights and darks, went forward in space. Yeah. This is my study of Saint Anne. And once again, I probably distorted Leonardo da Vinci's face a little bit. I was trying to focus on the shape of the jawline and his subtlety from dark to light. And Da Vinci, in contrast to a painter like Rembrandt, Da Vinci was very much interested in soft effects of light. Kind of with Rembrandt and Caravaggio and that whole school of thought, they were really interested in punching everything up to 11, the brightest brights, the darkest shadows. Da Vinci, I've got to find the letter, but in one of his letters, he talked about how his ideal light was either kind of noontime light, where it was misty outside, or he would put blankets up over the window to soften light. Leonardo da Vinci loved his grays and everything in between black and white that wasn't black and white, and it comes across in his drawing. And I think that's what I was observing while looking at his study for the Virgin and Saint Anne. So, yeah. I forgot I did this one. I've gotten to see both versions of the Virgin on the rocks at different points in my life. And here I think I was getting a little too obsessed with relating the tone, the warms and cools of the painting. So cool blues in the background, warm in the rock, cools on the Virgin. And I kind of lost the structure a little bit. Or I may have built up too much detail on top of my structure, but I definitely think I did a good job of capturing the idea that Da Vinci was using his paint to create a feeling of warm and cool in this cave. So that's probably what I was just more interested in at that point. This is fascinating. Rubens, I've mentioned Rubens before as kind of the manga artist before there were manga artists. He would have a whole studio of assistants assisting him, and he made bank. Sorry, snap warnings, guys, but Rubens is probably one of the wealthiest artists in the history of art because he figured out how to turn art making into a science where he'd essentially add the fame of his name and he'd add some finishing details, but it was more of a Rubens factory to allow him to produce lots more art. But his sketches are nuts compared to the finished paintings. The finished paintings are very refined and detailed. The sketches are almost abstract. They're so loose and all over the place, and he's clearly just figuring stuff out. So I don't know if I wrote down the name of that one, but I know that this is the Entombment, and this is one of the strongest points in my sketchbook, personally, because here I've got two different styles of drawing of the same painting. So this is a structural drawing, and this is a tonal drawing. Structure, tone. Here I'm trying to observe the knees, the elbows, the bends of the wrists, the shape of the muscles, trying to figure everything out using lines and measuring it and moving things around and thinking about the human bodies as skeletons. Here I'm thinking about just light and dark and movement. So you see I've strengthened this big strong movement from the arm down to the cloth around Jesus as he's being lowered. The people have been reduced to a few simple gray shapes that move the eye down. This is great. So what this tells me is this tells me not only what the people look like, what their skeletons look like, the bones and muscles, but what the total effect is, how your eye feels when you move around the page. So this is great. Two types of drawing. Tonal, soft, quick, using a sideways Conte crayon to get these big sweeps of color. Linear, pencil, diagrammatic. 100%. These two pages illustrate everything I've been trying to talk about in this channel, about using multiple methods of drawing to focus on different important types of things. This here is dancer at rest, hands behind her back, right hand forward, 1880s. Another Degas. Boy, oh boy, did he have good body language. Wowzer. Another Degas. This one is dancer looking at the sole of her right foot, 1890s. Once again, I'm trying to punch the blacks and whites at things that are close in space and trying to get softer around the end. And this is a good illustration of wrapping your lines. So the human thigh is round, and you can kind of wrap your hand around it. So rather than use straight lines on top of a rounded thing, wrap your lines around it, and you will create an optical illusion of feeling like you can reach your hand in there and wrap it around that thigh. Oh, great. That came out weird. It's been a weird week. All right. So, but yeah, wrap your lines around round things, and you will create that optical illusion. 2 studies of Michelangelo's sculpture of Moses. There I was trying to do a refined drawing and gave up on it because I didn't like the structure. And then here's a really loose, not even a structure drawing. I've just indicated a few little shapes and the outline of it. Study of the hand of David. So you can see around the buttock, I've just left that undefined and just the loosest idea of it down to the thigh. And I focused on the palm, the knuckles, the fingers moving forward and bending back. It's an okay study. Maybe it's a little bit rigid, I think. These are a whole bunch of studies of Japanese artists, and I don't know, since they're not as famous as Da Vinci and Michelangelo, I may have a harder time finding them again. See, Feitu, 1747. I was studying some of his wood blocks with separate scenes. I've got what looks like I wrote Madonna, and I don't know if I wrote Madonna because it actually was a Japanese depiction of the Madonna, or if I just made that connection and it was just supposed to be a mother and child. Merin Hi Haitong. This is probably something like Momotaro, something about the peach. Zia Weiki, 1744 to 1753. So here was this is just more note-taking. I'm not really trying to study the drawing that much, just trying to get a couple general ideas about it and then writing down a few notes for me to go look up later. These are studies of life from some guys who were playing music at a bar. And I was drawing quickly. You can see, leaning forward, leg coming forward, a few little indications of the light and shadow because I have to move quickly because they're moving around. Another that same group, light windows, quick shade, their positioning, and a few patrons that are in shadow because the light source is coming from this way. That might have been most of this book. All right. So this was something years ago I was thinking about the Hawkeye Initiative, and this was before Kate Bishop was Hawkeye. I had this goofy idea that maybe you could do like the Hawk Girl Initiative and put Hawk Girl in male poses that could be argued to be objectifying. So this is a Spider-Man pose, which is why she's got those big muscular Spider-Man arms. And I gave up on it because it just felt too cheesy and it felt like a forced meme. I've talked to, I think it might have been Unranked Chevron about this. He had the idea of doing a Hawkeye Initiative, but with Kate Bishop as the Hawkeye, where the point would be to make fun of the old Hawkeye Initiative and how tendentious that whole forced meme was. You could draw Kate Bishop either as a man in objectifying poses or as a man in kind of like a perfect example would be that terrible Spider-Gwen comic where it clearly was written just for the fantasy of punching a straight white male in the face, and it was ugly. And I kind of made the argument in that comic review that if this was anyone, I'd find it ugly. If it was a story about a trans person getting punched in the face, and the feel of the story was, oh, those people, wouldn't it be nice if I could punch one in the face? Ooh, it makes me sick. So the thing about that, though, is that I don't want to do like a forced meme because that comes off as like lazy or cringy, but I do feel like it'd be a lot of fun to draw Kate Bishop Hawkeye in poses that would essentially call attention to the silliness of the original Hawkeye Initiative. And the thing, all I want to say about that is go, if something like that sparks you, go for it. Don't wait around for me to do it. But I do think I will do a couple drawings that illustrate the point, and maybe it could be a little bit of a how to draw with me. And you wouldn't have to be a drawing expert to do it. That would be part of the fun, is you could actually kind of copy after a master and even if you were not an artist at all, it's fun to trace a master to see how their line work. So I think I'm going to do that with an Alan Davis drawing. And we'll talk more about the Hawkeye Initiative 2018, current year, maybe in a future video. But you don't have to wait around for me to do it. You can, if you got ideas for it, dive into it. These were a lot of studies of landscapes. I bet I was just looking at landscape painting in London and making quick notations of the feel of it and the shape of it. So some of them are very loose and I can barely tell what's going on. Some of them I think I had a better idea of the shape of the formations and the light and shadow. So I have a much easier time studying that, and I could probably redraw it based on my notes. So this one's very loose and all over the place, but I have a feel like maybe that was low and this is a cliff. This is much better where I've got a feel for light and shadow and this being in the foreground and that being in the background. That's probably what I was trying to indicate with my really loose light lines in the back was shade, softness, mist, distance, atmospheric perspective, making things softer in the distance. Horseshoe Falls, you can see that strong horseshoe line there. Don't know what this is supposed to be. This is one of my weakest ones, I think, where I can't tell what's going on. This is a stronger one where I can definitely see the light and dark and get a feel for it. I think it's a land formation wrapping around. Really high view. Mountains, Mount Rundle. I was really interested in landscape from one of my comic projects. It's the one that I'm working on that I want to publish, therefore I won't talk about on this channel because I want it to succeed or fail on its own merits. But I'm completely fascinated in landscape, and I was on purpose trying to teach myself how to draw giant, massive landscapes and not just little portraits of people in front of a blank background. Tower of London range. Okay. Yeah, so this must be London. I'm looking at paintings by landscape painters and taking notes. Grenville Channel. Okay, big, there's the channel right there in the middle and shaded rock formations around it. Now, I left this blank not because, I think some of my other books I left blank because I was a bit embarrassed or timid about my drawing. I know I left this one blank because I wanted this book, if I ever went back to London, so I could do a compare-contrast of then and now. So that's one of the reasons I left this one blank. And then I actually did found a couple little hidden drawings where I probably just couldn't control myself, and I just grabbed this book and started sketching in it. Those are mostly just a few little dinky superhero ideas. I found that same fight scene. I had this great idea for a fight scene on the playground interacting with the monkey bars. I had this idea for a mirrored fight where you would see the perspective of both like the hero and the villain. And so if there's a punch, you see the fist coming at you, and you see the hero, from the hero's perspective, his fist going out. Just little goofy ideas like that, you know, that could be a cool bit. Aliens, cartoon characters, aliens, superheroes. There's that playground fight, and I'm just trying to get a feel for like all, you know, the twists and turns and the judo of it. That was a novel I wanted to write that was, I was going to like mix up Charles Dickens and Zorro, but I never went anywhere with it because I got too obsessed with the history again, and I didn't really have a good idea for a story to tell with characters. I just had a few fight scene ideas for it. Some abstract sketches for probably one of my abstract painting classes. More kung fu fights and judo. Diving down through the monkey bars and underneath and around. Yeah, so sketch your little loose ideas out because you're going to forget about them. And this functions as your way of remembering that. Joffrey from Game of Thrones. This was for probably some sort of theater class where you would have to design set pieces, essentially. Emulation of brick and stone. Yeah, so I'm trying to get a feel for like a big, expansive space. So I'm pretty happy with this sketchbook, even looking back on it. You can tell I'm not Da Vinci, but I'm trying to copy Da Vinci to see what he's doing. Not Da Vinci, that it's wrong. It's an anachronism to call him Da Vinci. Leonardo was his name. Da Vinci was just his point of origin. But I do think that making these studies helped me see a lot of things. And actually, as refined and polished as the Da Vinci one is, I think this is the best thing where I can look back on it and see a really strong thing I was doing as someone making studies of painters, where this is actually helpful because it's looking at a painting in two completely different ways to study how it works and how it works on you, how it evokes emotions out of you. Careful, looking at every little detail, trying to figure it out like it's a math problem, feeling it out, trying to flow it out and let your hand decide it. So it's not your brain working, it's your hand and your instincts telling you how the painting is working. Excellent. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I'm so glad I found this sketchbook. Love you guys. Catch you later.